Hi everyone, and welcome to the Practically Perfect PA webinar for this month. We are going to be looking at setting boundaries for assistants. It's always such a pleasure welcoming you to our webinars. I'd love to hear on the chat where you're from, where you're joining us from today, and what you hope to get out of today's session. We are broadcasting live on LinkedIn and on YouTube and on Facebook as well. So please do let me know on the chat if you can see me and you can hear me okay. And that's always helpful, especially when we're going live, and where you're joining us from today. Fantastic, from Ireland. Welcome, welcome. I think there's a few of you joining us on our different platforms today. So as always, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. This is going to be an interactive webinar. So it's live. I am live with you today from Barcelona, and I do like to ask our attendees to get involved and answer some of my questions on the chat, especially around a subject like setting boundaries, which I know for assistants is always a tricky subject and something that comes up quite frequently in our sessions. So thank you, everyone. It's fantastic having you with us. It looks like you are from all over the world: Argentina, the USA, the UK, Australia, Germany, Canada. Fantastic. That's very exciting to have you all with us. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Nicky Christmas. I'm the founder of Practically Perfect PA, and I am live from Barcelona in Spain, where it is about 3:30 in the afternoon. Okay, so setting boundaries. As I said, this is always a topic that is close to my heart. We discuss it a lot on Practically Perfect PA and the EA campus, and it's always something that brings up some interesting conversations. So while I load up my slides, I would like to start with, let me see if I can make myself a little bit bigger. Oh, that's it. This is better. Then you can at least see the slides properly, and you get to see me as well. So I like to start with a question. And here we go. Like I said, please let me know on the chat the answer to these questions. It's always great to get insights from you guys, particularly as you are such fountains of information and knowledge yourselves. And so many of you learn from each other on these webinars. So please do get involved in the chat. So here is my question to start our session. Would you say that you are good at setting boundaries? So would you say you are good at setting boundaries? That's the first question. And then my follow-up question is this: are you good at setting boundaries? And are you good at sticking to them? So let me know on the chat. Are you good at setting boundaries? Yes or no? And then are you good at sticking with them? So let me know on the chat, because they are two very different things. So let me know. While I wait for you guys to let me know on the chat the answers to some of those questions, I'm going to tell you why. For me, I think assistants too, sometimes, yeah, and I guess it depends on the boundaries, right? A special shout out to William from Scottonomics there. You can see on the chat. Hello from the bedroom. Hi, William. Thanks for joining us. William is the co-founder and CEO of Practically Perfect PA. So yeah, he's currently watching from the bedroom. Fantastic. Okay, so why do I think setting boundaries is so important? Okay, I think that assistants need to set boundaries for several reasons, and we're going to talk about these over the course of the next hour. We work closely with our executives who often work incredibly long hours, and 9 times out of 10 are really passionate about their work. So this means for assistants 2 things. Sometimes we get really sucked up in what they're passionate about. We try and match them on the hours that they work because, you know, we so want to help them and support them in the work they do. So we end up working really long hours and doing and you know, getting as involved in the business as they are. Also, because our executives are so passionate about what they do, they are really busy people, their assistants can often be taken for granted, and this can happen really quickly. It might not be intentional, but it isn't to say that it doesn't happen. We do our jobs so effectively that I think our executives expect us and get used to us being around all the time. And they do, and again, let me know in the chat if you've experienced this, because I'm sure you have, they do have a tendency to become very reliant on us. So boundary setting is an essential part of any relationship, be it personal or a working relationship. So where do assistants draw the line? And in this webinar, we're going to be looking at how we set boundaries as assistants. How do we make sure we're setting the right boundaries? And then how do we commit to them? And then how do we communicate those boundaries? So we've got about half an hour to talk about this topic, and I can see that everybody's already getting stuck in to this one. Please do use the chat, get involved in the conversation. But I am going to start the session with this fantastic quote from Marie Forleo. And why I don't start every session with a quote from Marie Forleo, I don't know, but this one is particularly relevant, I think. So Marie says, machines are built to work 24/7, but human beings are not. It's crucial that we put boundaries in place for ourselves to have offline time, exercise and sleep, and time with loved ones and friends and family that's not tethered to a screen. That's how we start to get into the dance between being effective and productive with our time and also being healthy and sane human beings. So let me know how that resonates with you. When I first heard that, I thought, well, that makes so much sense. That just makes so much sense to me. It's not rocket science. We all need to have those things to be functioning and sane human beings. So why aren't we, particularly we being assistants, why aren't we really putting boundaries in place to make sure that we are getting that balance right? It's not always easy, but I thought that quote helps us kind of frame the conversation. It's important to say that, look, we can't work 24/7. We can't. So it's important for assistants to put boundaries in place for our own health and mental well-being. To truly commit to boundary settings, you have to understand your why. I've spoke about this a lot before in the past, borrowed from the amazing Simon Sinek, who talks about in his, everybody should read this book, his book, Why. You have to understand why you do the things that you do and what makes those things important to you. So what is your why? It could be your family, it could be your friends, it could be your health, it could be your well-being. Why do you do the things that you do? So it's important to root your why in things that make you happy and bring you joy, because it makes, and this is the crucial part, it makes setting boundaries much easier. So when you go about setting your boundaries, what are your whys? Why are they important to you? And then how do you fit those boundaries to protect those whys? Because that's the reason we're setting boundaries, isn't it? It's so that we can protect the things that are most important to us. Now, our executives, a lot of their whys and a lot of our whys as well are, I want to be really good at my job. I'm really passionate about it. It's a huge part of my life, and that's absolutely okay. And, if that's a huge part of your why, then fantastic. But if there are other things that make up your why and the balance isn't there, that's where boundary setting becomes even more crucial. And this is sort of at the crux of the reason why boundary setting is so important. Time. I'm going to make this slide a little bit bigger so that you can all see it there. Time. It's not an unlimited resource. Does that make sense? It's not. It's finite. We all have the same amount of it, but we also, as we all know, we don't have a huge amount of it. So I think the most obvious place to start is with thinking about time. It's around about setting time for assistance. As I said, it's not an unlimited resource, and assistants need to use it wisely. Setting boundaries around where you spend your time, getting very clear and focused, will help you do the things that you want to accomplish in a day, a week, a month, and a year. And again, let me know in the chat if you think about time like this. Do you plan it out so that you can think about, okay, what am I doing with my time over the next week, month, and year? And what do I want to come out of the time that I spend on different elements? it is something that you can and should be thinking about in that sense. It's a resource. So how am I going to spend it? When you're very intentional about your time, you'll notice that you will find space for the things that you love. Yeah, I mean, we're all planners at heart, really, aren't we? So, and we do this for our executives all the time, but many of us don't do this for ourselves. So when you are intentional about time, you'll find space for the things that you love. And that's a really exciting place to be. So the next question that I have for you, and again, let me know on the chat, is around non-negotiables. So my first question to you is this: do you have any non-negotiables, the things that you will not sacrifice for work? So again, let me know on the chat what they are. What are your non-negotiables? Because this really is one of the first places I think we should look when we're talking about non-negotiables. So let me know in the chat, what are your non-negotiables? So these are the things you absolutely want to do with your time. Want, but also must do. So yeah, what are some of your boundaries about your non-negotiables? So Lauren has said they're my children and my husband. Yep, absolutely. I think that's the case for many of us. Family ultimately comes first. Friendships come first. But there's lots of, I love that. Resh has said, taking a lunch break. Yes, it doesn't have to be these huge, grand things, family, friends, loved ones. Taking a lunch break. I love that. So for me, it's spending time with my kids. Because as a business owner, I'm in a similar position to your executives. Work is such a huge part of my life. So spending time with my kids when they get home from school, that's a non-negotiable for me. Shutting my laptop down around about 9 p.m. at the latest so that I can spend time with William, who I've mentioned earlier, my other half. That's really important to me. It's usually in front of the telly. Most of you, I'm sure, can relate to that, but I need that time. I always want to make sure that I have time to read because I find that a really good way to de-stress. I'm working on creating some non-negotiables around eating better and doing more exercise, but I'll put my hands up there and say that's always work in progress. There are times that I absolutely commit to those non-negotiables and they really are non-negotiable. But on the whole, they waver like the rest of you. And I try to really stick to those non-negotiable boundaries every day. For me, I also have monthly and yearly non-negotiables. So for me, that's trying to make sure that I always take a vacation or holiday time every year. And that time is not, that time over a holiday, I am not working. It is shut down the laptop. I am out of the office for a week or 2 weeks. So again, that's something that I plan on a yearly basis. So let's have a look at some of your answers around what are your non-negotiables. I think this is such a wonderful thing for us just to take the time as assistants and really think about. So RC, exercise is my non-negotiable. Gabriella, time with my daughter. As I said, taking a lunch break, time with my family. Alex has said time with my husband, time to read. Need to be better with exercise. Alex, I absolutely hear you. Hannah, my cat, I love that. Many of us have dogs, taking your dog for a walk. That's always really important. Dinner, I love that. Dinner is sacrosanct and I don't answer text after 9 p.m. unless it's a true emergency. Fantastic, KM, well done. Workout, fantastic. So we've all got some non-negotiables in there. That's really good. You can also pop on there if you don't have any and that you need to work on them as well. Kim there said not checking emails once I'm at home. Fantastic. I love that we all have non-negotiables. So if you are struggling with non-negotiables, or you maybe have some in the back of your mind, but they don't always get actioned, then I always think planning out, and again, I've spoken about this and asked assistants to do this for their executives, but they don't necessarily do it for themselves, but planning out an ideal week structure. So that will really help you start to visualize and stick to your boundaries. If you go back and have a look at some of the previous webinars that I've done, or have a look on Practically Perfect PA, you will see quite a lot of resources on there for how to structure your executive's ideal work week. Now, you can and absolutely should do that for yourself as well, because then, as I said, around time, you'll start to put the spaces in there for the things that you consider to be non-negotiables, and you'll plan them out so that they, are in your diary, and you'll find that you'll stick to them more easily. Again, remember that attaching a strong why to your non-negotiable is really helpful. It will give you the ability to make a solid commitment to that non-negotiable. And along with understanding what you want to spend your time on, it's equally as important to set boundaries around what you don't want to spend your time on. Again, this is something that I don't think we consider hugely. We all can, and I think some of us have found it easier there to list all of the things like, I love spending time with my family. So for me, that's a really easy non-negotiable and it's easy to frame that in my mind. But what about some of the things I just don't want to do? What are some of the things that, I don't want to be spending my time on? So for me, that really boils down to limiting how much time I spend on my phone and my laptop. So I put quite strong boundaries in place that limit screen time and more specifically social media and emails. And as of quite recently, and it's something that I've definitely managed to cut down on. But I would say the last couple of years, I was spending a huge amount of time watching the news. I don't know if many of you have felt the same over the last few years, but it's definitely something that I was doing. And I really noticed that it wasn't good at all for my mental health. So I've really cut down on the amount of news that I consume as well. So what other things that you find with your time, you're aware you're spending time, but you don't want to be spending time on that. So think about that as well. Some of the things, and again, let me know in the chat if there's some of the things that you're spending time on that you don't really want to be. So let's move on to how you go about setting some boundaries around your work areas and what you do within those areas and how to make commitments then to the rest of your life outside of work. So when it comes to working and setting boundaries, I know it can be difficult for assistants. We often are, I hate this phrase, but it's true. We are often people pleasers. We often have the ad hoc duties section in our job description, which means that, as many of you know, co-workers can often drop things onto our desk unexpected. We quite often have overstressed executives who rely on us to manage their time and actually ensure that they commit to their boundaries and what's important to them and their why, which means sometimes we can obviously, as we've discussed, forget our own boundaries. So I always think one of the best places to start when we're thinking about boundary setting is what is expected of you. And again, setting expectations for me is a really, really important step for assistants to make. It's really much easier to do it when you are at that interview stage. But I know many of you watching are, in the middle of your careers, in the middle of working for a particular organization, you've been there a while. So it's difficult to have these conversations now when expectations have maybe not been set, but you've been working in a particular way for a few years and it just is how it is. So I get that. But I'm going to talk about it, first of all, from an interview perspective. So I'm sure all of you at some point will move on to another role. It's easier to set these expectations when you walk into an interview, because then you will know if the executive's expectations match yours. And then if it does, it's going to be easier to set boundaries. So I want to talk about some questions that you can ask, firstly and predominantly in an interview situation, but then maybe how we can go about incorporating these questions into a one-to-one with your executive at this point in your working relationship with them. So first of all, let's have a quick look at the questions. And I want you to tell me, once you've read them through, and again, I'll make this bigger for you so that you can see them more clearly. I want you to let me know what you think of these questions. Are they scary to you? Would you ask them in an interview or now with your executive? And then I want you to think, well, why not? Why wouldn't I ask them? So these are the questions. Do you want me in the office when you are in the office? Do you expect me to answer my mobile phone, emails outside of office hours? What is the culture here regarding hours? Do staff work over their expected hours? And if so, is this from the office or remotely? What hours do you work and when do you switch off? So let me know again on the chat how you feel about these questions. Would you be comfortable asking them? And if not, why not? I'll just put myself back onto the screen. There we go. So let me know. So KM said, I don't have a problem with first, second or third, but the third trips me up for some reason. So yeah, and I know exactly the reason why, because when you go into an interview, you want to be, and I get it, you want to be absolutely seen like you will work really hard. I'll work really hard for this organization. I'll put in the hours. I will graft, all of those things. And if you ask this question in an interview, I think people would think, why is she, or you might think that they are thinking, why is she asking this, she or he is asking this question? Are they going to work the hours that we want them to work? So I get it. I really do. I think how you kind of counter that is during the interview process or when you are building a relationship with your executive, let them know a bit about you. Let them know some of your commitments outside of work so that they know, you know, instinctively that you have commitments and responsibilities outside of work, and the hours are the hours. And sometimes you're not always going to be able to work longer hours because you've got other commitments outside of work. So let me know again on the chat what you think about these questions. Lauren has said, I would absolutely be comfortable in asking these questions, but I also feel like in years of experience, I don't know if somebody just starting would be as comfortable. Lauren, I absolutely understand that. Alex said, we've moved to most of us working hybrid. The top question was one of the first I asked my boss. Been together for 8 years though, so I'm quite comfortable asking these questions. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Came to the funniest part. I've been with my current executive for 9 years and I make myself available outside of work, but that is because she doesn't abuse that privilege. I'm just going to pop that up on the chat there so people can see this. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. I love that because she doesn't abuse that privilege. And it brings me really, thank you, Kayam. It brings me really nicely onto my next point, which is this. I believe most executives are reasonable people and will respect your boundaries if you are flexible in other areas. So I always think one of the best assets we have as assistants is that we can be really flexible. And particularly around working hours and things like that, we should be, because we don't know the emergencies that will crop up in the office, and we don't know when our executive or other people in the organization are going to ask us to drop everything to complete urgent work. And I think that's part of the role. I think we all need to understand and respect that. But a flexible approach to work will mean on occasions we're in the office for some long periods of time. So flexibility is the trade-off. Yes, I will be flexible when I need to be, and I will make sacrifices, but I will also leave the office early or shut my laptop down when I'm working from home, and then I will go off and be able to do what I want because I've made the hours up elsewhere. How does that sound for everybody? As I said, I believe that most executives are reasonable, most organizations are reasonable and will respect your boundaries, but there are the occasions when that is not the case, and these questions will help reset that expectation so you know where you are. If these questions come back and say, I want you in the office all the time, yes, I expect you to answer your emails. We work really long hours. You have to sacrifice a lot when working with us. If that sounds amazing to you and that sounds like a fantastic opportunity, brilliant. If it doesn't, at least you know where your expectations are and you can make decisions from that point on. I hope that makes sense and I hope that helps. So we've set expectations. Now we need to talk about some compromises. Say no. I know so many of you, no is difficult for assistants. I understand that. So although you have boundaries and non-negotiables as assistants, it's realistic that we do occasionally compromise, and we're flexible with that compromise. Concentrate on doing most of your work during the work hours. Be available when there is a crisis, but also make sure you turn your phone off, your laptop off when you want to spend time doing the things that bring you joy. So one of the ways that you get to be able to do that is by saying no to the things that are not your priority. And again, if you know anything about Practically Perfect PA, having your priorities as an assistant and respecting your objectives, your executive's objectives, and saying no to other people that do not fit within those objectives is really, really important. So I can't talk about setting objectives without mentioning the no word. As I said, we have a lot of resources on Practically Perfect PA around how you structure saying no, how you can be effective in saying no. But it's worth reiterating that you have to decide what to say no to and when to say yes. Saying no allows you more time and space to do the things that you want to do. It's easier to say no when you understand that your role is strategic and your work is very much aligned to the goals and objectives of your executive and your organization. Does that sound fair? I think that's really, really important. Your role is strategic, and what you do is aligned to the business objectives of your organization and your executives. So anything that doesn't fall within that remit is you've got every right to say no to that work. If there is no explanation as to why the work fits into those that structure or those areas, again, you've got every right to say no to that work. So I would say, and I think a lot of you who've been doing this role for a while, for assistants who struggle to say no, it gets easier with practice. Let me know if you agree with that. I often said yes to things and then felt really uneasy about it, anxious. And then let me know if this is something that sounds familiar. I would also then start to feel, dread about doing the work that I had said yes to. I now know with practice that if I feel those things, I'm going to say no to them. Unless it's good for me to be uncomfortable, or I'm stepping outside my stepping outside my comfort zone, which I don't like to do, but I know it's really important. I know I have to challenge myself. So don't say no for those reasons. But if it doesn't fit in the framework of what I said, it moves the business and the organization forward, you can say no. So let me know how that feels for some of you. Maria said that after over 30 years, I've learned to say no. It works well and people respect you more and value your help when you say yes. That's perfect. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you there, Maria. Cam said, saying no to someone who isn't your boss. I can look at reprioritizing this behind my assigned responsibilities. However, I cannot commit to a timeline as my workload is dictated by, and then insert your executive's name. Absolutely. And again, on Practically Perfect PA, we have examples of how to say no on email, how to say no to people's faces. So yes, saying no gives you more time to do the things that you actually want to do. And I have another quote for you from one of my absolute heroes. I think most of us have her as one of their absolute heroes, Oprah Winfrey. You have to be able to set boundaries. Otherwise, the rest of the world is telling you who you are and what you should be doing. You can still be a nice person and set boundaries. I'm going to leave that one up there for a minute because if Oprah Winfrey says it's okay to say no, it really is okay to say no. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you not a team player. It doesn't make you bad at your job. It doesn't make you an unhelpful assistant or any of those things. It is a strategic decision and it frees up time for you to then go and do the things that really push the business forward. It may be that you might have to have an uncomfortable conversation. I'm sure you're probably going to disappoint a few people, but you have to put your boundaries front and center. Okay, so I'm just going to take a breather for a minute because I know we've just covered a lot of stuff there, and we've got a little bit more to go. We've got a few exercises that I'd like to do with you. But for now, let me know again, just on the chat, how you're feeling. I'm loving that you're sharing your examples with each other and how you've gone about saying no. That's fantastic. So let's move on to the next stage. I want you to do a little exercise to assess your current boundaries, where you are with them. And we've got a series of statements I want you to answer, again, either on the chat or just in your mind. And these questions and statements come from a fantastic book called Boundaries, Where You End and I Begin. And that's by an author called Anne Catherine. And I'll pop up her the name of her book on the chat in a minute when you're thinking about these statements. So let's start with boundaries that are unhealthy, and they are characterized by the following. And again, I'm just going to make myself disappear so you can see these nice and big. So boundaries that are unhealthy: sharing too much too soon, or at the other end of the spectrum, closing yourself off and not expressing your needs and wants, feeling responsible for others' happiness, the inability to say no for fear or rejection or abandonment. You base how you feel about yourself on how others treat you. You allow others to make decisions for you. Consequently, you feel powerless and do not take responsibility for your own life. So I'm just going to give you a second to just think about those. And again, express your views about them on the chat, or have a good think in your mind if any of these resonate with you. And I'll just pop in the name of the book while you're letting us know on the chat. Okay, so Heidi, thank you. It's such a great topic, so I'm very glad to be covering it. So these are the unhealthy characteristics. These are some of the boundaries that maybe aren't helping us in our careers or our personal lives. I think the one that probably most resonates with assistants is the second two: feeling responsible for other people's happiness or success in our case, the inability to say no for fear of rejection or abandonment, or for career progression, I guess. So yes, these resonate a lot for me, absolutely. So I want to move on to the boundaries that are healthy. So again, let me know in the chat if these seem relevant to you. So boundaries that are healthy allow you to have high self-esteem and self-respect, share your personal information gradually in a mutually sharing and trusting environment, protect your physical and emotional space from unwanted intrusion, have an equal partnership with your executive where responsibility and power are shared, be assertive, confidently saying yes or no, and be okay when others say no to you. Separate your needs, thoughts, feelings, and desires from others. Recognize that your boundaries and needs are different from others. Empower yourself to make healthy choices and take responsibility for yourself. These all sound fantastic, don't they? And again, let me know in the chat if any of these resonate with you, how you feel about them. Are they healthy to you? Is there anything more that you can add? Let me know what you think of these ones. I think when it comes to setting boundaries, and these are the end results of setting boundaries, then it's well worth doing and having them in place, because if this is how it's going to feel once they're in place, then this is a really healthy place to be. Yes to the second one. Yeah. I may have inserted in the fourth one, have an equal partnership with your executive where responsibilities and power are shared. I love that. Power is shared. I think that's really thought-provoking. Do you feel like you have an equal amount of power in the relationship? And if you don't, how do you go about changing that dynamic? Okay, I know we've got time for questions and a Q&A coming up, which I always love. So I'm going to hope that you've all taken that down. and we will share the slides with you. So let's move on to the final exercise. And it's a really simple template for those of you who want to work on your boundary setting. This is a good way of planning out how you go about doing that and how you think about it. So as I said, it's a really simple framework. It is a series of statements that you make, which are based around the following. I am not. I want, I do not want. I will not. So going back to what we said at the beginning, thinking about what you want your boundaries to look like, where you want to spend your time, and what you don't want your boundaries to look like, and where you do not want to spend your time. So this breaks it out for you so that you can plan out your boundaries, write them down. There is always power in writing these things down and planning them out, so that over the next year you can really think about what those boundaries are going to look like. And at the end of the year, when you reflect back on it, what differences have you seen in the way that you've been treated, people have treated you, you've treated other people, and how having some boundaries and healthy boundaries in place have helped you. Okay, boundary setting. I think we've covered a lot there. We have always have time for questions on our Practically Perfect PA webinars. Before we dive into the Q&A, I'm going to give you a minute just to finish up on the slides. And then I've got a couple of discounts that I want to share with you and some things that are coming up on Practically Perfect PA. So in a few weeks, on the 11th and 12th of May, we have the Future Assistant Global Summit, which is our 2-day live event, which I really hope that you can join this year. We have an incredible lineup this year. I am so excited. We are covering a huge amount of topics. We're doing some more work on boundary setting, but we're also covering, there's so much. We're covering a lot around confidence, resilience, how to have those uncomfortable conversations, how to work with different types of personalities in the office. We also are doing quite a lot on AI and technology that's going to be moving our roles forward over the next, we're only looking at the next year, because who knows where AI is going in the next 2 years, but we're covering some of the tools that you can be using now to elevate your role. We have a ton of sessions on hybrid working and how that is working for assistants and things that we can do to increase our productivity, and a whole ton more. It's a 2-day event and it's over 3 streams, so there's a lot of content. Prices start from £150 for our post-event access, and then it goes up to £250 to include all of the sessions and masterclasses as well. So I hope that you can join us. All the information for the Future Assistant is on the website. We also have a really good deal at the moment for admin week coming up next week, but admin month, as many of us have moved it to a whole month, which I think is fantastic. We currently have a 33% discount on all of our courses. So all of the online Practically Perfect PA courses are with a 33% discount at the moment. So all you have to do is select your course, go onto the cart and enter admin week 33. And I'll just pop that in the chat so you've got that code there. And that will give you 33% off all of our courses, all of our online courses. So if you would like to take some of our courses, then I would suggest doing that this month, because that's the lowest price that we go to for admin week. So I take full advantage of that. Okay. Let me know then on the chat if you have any questions around boundary setting or really anything that we do on Practically Perfect PA. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have. And I'll wait for you to let me know on the chat. We've got about 20 minutes. So if you do have any questions around boundary setting or anything else, then let me know. And I will wait. First webinar I've attended with you and I loved it. Thank you so much, DG. It's a pleasure having you with us. Thank you. As I said, I know boundary setting isn't easy. and it's something that a lot of us can feel uncomfortable with. But once they're in place, oh my goodness, you notice a difference. So again, if you do have any questions, let me know. If not, I can read out some comments on the chat. Trish said there, I noticed people don't take setting boundaries well at first, but when I'm consistent and non-reactive to their emotions, many times they come around. I couldn't agree more. Once they're in place, you notice the difference, and you notice the way that people treat you as well. Juliet said, I love how these slides show a more deliberate, conscious choice for all of us with boundary setting. Absolutely. Jacqueline said, what is your suggestion? How to say no when you are new at the company? Jacqueline, as I said, the best place to start with boundary setting is when you're new at an organisation, because it's like starting afresh. It's once you're in the organisation and you've got those expectations in place, then people will know that they can only ask you certain things within those boundaries. So one of the things I would say is let people into your life, let them know that, you know, if you've got commitments outside of work, what they are and what's important to you. So to give you an example, before I started at an organisation, when I worked in London, one of the things that was hugely important to me, and still is actually, is I played in the UK and Commonwealth countries. I know that you will know this sport, but for other countries, I know you don't. So I play a sport called netball, which is, I love it. I've played it since I was a kid. I used to play as an adult. I still play now. And I played when I worked. So I had to, on certain days after work, I had to leave at 5 because I had to be able to get over to my netball training, and I had to go and make sure that I was there in time to play the games. So on those days, it was a Tuesday and a Thursday, I had to leave at 5. But because I spoke so passionately about my love of netball, it was something that people just understood that I did, and that boundary was in place, even with my executive. So at the time, she knew that on a Tuesday and Thursday, I left at 5. My computer shut down and I left because I had to, because I wanted to get there for netball. So it wasn't a family thing. It wasn't pets. It was something that was just really passion. It was a real passion of mine. So I just made sure that I had those conversations really early on, so that people could understand what was important to me. But then there was flexibility, because I would also work later on other days. So it's that give and take. But that's a soft way of introducing your boundaries, particularly in a new setting. I hope that helped a little bit. Any suggestions for different expectations from different executives? Yes, I think this is really, really common. And let me pop this one up, because I think this is a common one. You are going to have those different expectations from different executives, and juggling multiple executives, again, is something that we have a lot of resources on Practically Perfect PA. Again, it's around communication, and we always come back to that. I would say it's also about being consistent, so that you aren't letting boundaries drop for one executive but not another, because I think in this day and age, that's going to get back to all of the other executives. So it's setting those boundaries and being consistent with them. I think it's human nature for assistants. They're going to like one executive more than the other. They're going to gel. They're going to, sync in terms of relationships with one, maybe better than the other. So there is the, there is the options that would then, are more flexible in our boundaries with one executive than the other. I would say try and avoid that as much as possible. That is not going to do you any favors, because it will get back to the other executives. So be consistent. If you have a boundary in place, be consistent across all of the executives. I think if the one executive who potentially is pushing those boundaries sees that the other executives aren't getting away with it, there's that kind of peer pressure there. And then it goes back to what we were saying earlier around communication. Sometimes you will have to have these tricky conversations with people who are pushing on your boundaries. And it's always best to have a kind of almost templated approach to how you have those conversations. Because again, with that consistency, you'll get used to pushing back and making sure that your boundaries are respected. And it will get easier with time every time you have to have those conversations, if you're doing some kind of repetition around how you frame your boundaries. I hope that helped a little bit. I know it's always tricky with multiple executives, particularly when they are different levels within the organization in terms of seniority. Yeah. So again, Christina, I hope that's helped. 3 executives. I used to work with 3 executives. I know it's not easy, so I hope that helps a little bit. DG, tips for dealing with a micromanaging CEO, not just for me, but for the whole team. Any resources available? Yes, we have a ton of resources available on micromanaging. In fact, if you type into Practically Perfect PA micromanaging, you will find some resources on there. The number one tip around micromanaging, I always find, is it is not you. It is your executive. There is something going on with your executive as to why they are micromanaging. And along with that, I would also say not being particularly good at delegating. And again, there are some resources on Practically Perfect PA about that as well. It's not you, it's them. There is something that's happened to your executive as to why they are micromanaging. And you have to get to the bottom of what that is. So I always say, really study them. We've got some questions you can ask them subtly, maybe in your one-to-ones, as to why they're micromanaging. And then we've got a whole load of resources around how you go about unpicking that. The first thing I always say, and I think it's well worth reiterating, do you want to unpick it? That's the first thing to say. Do you want to put your energy into that? Because if you don't, then you're not beholden to any organization. If it's too much, then you can always find executives who aren't micromanagers, and who are willing to delegate or won't. It's normally a control issue, so don't want to control every aspect of what you're doing. If you do want to put the time in and the effort to do that, then we've got loads of resources to go about doing that. It takes time and it takes energy, but it is possible to get there. And sometimes, again, it's having that difficult conversation with your executive, because half the time they're not even aware that they're doing it, or they'll come up with some reason as to why they're doing it. Let's have a look. What else have we got? I think there's some interesting tips and tricks on there, which I'll leave up because it looks like some of you are in the middle of a conversation. But yeah, absolutely, there are. What do you think about Microsoft Copilot? Tell us more, because I have to say I haven't heard of Microsoft Copilot. I'm a Google user, so I must admit I'm taking my off the ball a little bit on Microsoft. But please do let me know if anybody else has used Microsoft Copilot and what you think. I'd be very interested to see some thoughts. Yeah, I've never heard of it. So I'm about to sign off and go and have a look at Microsoft Copilot. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we've got a few minutes left. I'm happy to answer any more questions, but it looks like we might have come to the end of our questions that are on the chat. I hope that I answered the questions that were put forward to me. If not, please always feel free to get in touch with me on Practically Perfect PA. All of my contact details are on there. I'm also inside the EA campus if anybody wants to get in contact with me via our online community. As I said, the next things coming up on the Practically Perfect PA calendar are the Future Assistant Global Summit, which is on the 11th and 12th of May. We have our Admin Week discount, which is Admin Week 33, if you want to take any courses with us and get that discount. And then lastly, we will be back next month with another live webinar. So I think I've covered everything. Get in touch with me if you need to. But for now, enjoy the rest of your Friday and enjoy your weekend. And I hope that you find success in setting boundaries. But for now, take care, and I'll see you live next month.